Alright, so what I'm going to do right here with these items I have in front of us is I'm going to pair this RC controller with our receiver, which in turn is going to give the signal to the motor and tell it what we want to do based on these controls that are available on here. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to connect power to the receiver. And if you look at the second row down, you'll see the word BAT. That's where the battery goes. And to maintain polarity, the black wire goes outboard to this surface right here. You can see the black wire. And I'm going to connect it to the battery source. And make sure your inline switch is on. And what happens is you'll notice that that little LED light, or that little light right there, that indicator, is blinking slowly. This is where I take my paper clip that I bent out, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to press this button that it's called the bind button. What it does is it connects this receiver to the signal that this is going to be putting out. So when I do that, this light should flicker quickly. And you'll see I press that button just once, and you'll see that that indicator light is saying, okay, so far so good. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull my joystick on the left side here all the way down to this orientation, and then I'm going to turn the power on. And you'll notice that my light has stopped flashing, which tells me I've got a good signal between the two. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hook my battery up to my receiver, maintaining polarity, right? The black wire outboard, and I'm going to put that in the signal spot that says number 1, and make sure that's in there good. And so that's what you should have right now, is something that looks like that. Light's still solid. Now I'm going to operate my controller, and let me do us all a little favor, because I'm just going to put a little ink mark on my motor right here, just so I have a visual to see what's going on. And I'll try to hold that up in focus, and I put my joystick, and you'll see that it's rotating 90 degrees right and left like that. But we want this to be a continuous motor, because we're going to use this one to climb the hill or perform something that needs 360 degree rotation. So how we're going to do that is simple. We're going to incorporate this programming board, which should be easy enough. I'm going to take my inline switch. I'm going to turn the power off. I'm going to disconnect the motor from my receiver. I'm going to disconnect the battery from my receiver and put that aside for right now. So now what I have is my motor's independent of everything, as is my battery pack. So let's bring this guy into play. If you notice, there's two positions on this controller, right here and right here, that looks like I froze up a little bit. Right here and right here, these 3 prongs, there's 2 sets of them. And if you look on the board, you'll see a minus sign, a plus sign, and an S. I know enough about electricity to get hurt. I'm thinking, okay, there's the negative, there's the positive, and that should be the ground. But whatever the situation, it holds polarity. We want our black wire to be on the negative side. Now, it doesn't matter which one of these sets you use, because they're both the same. I'm just going to plug this in. Notice my black wire is to the left, and I'm going to plug that in and turn my power on. And you saw the little flash that indicates my power is connected. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to plug in my motor, and again I'm going to maintain the black is on the negative side. You'll see right at the top of our board here, and I'll connect that up like that. So now this is the configuration you should have. You should have the power and the motor running to our program board. The next move is to make sure that this little switch, try to get up in focus, this little switch right here, this little linear switch, you'll see that it can go from the S to the C. And we want it in the C because C is standing for continuous. So we make sure that button's oriented to the C. Now, we're ready to do our programming as long as we check to make sure our power is on the inline switch, which it is. And I'm going to hold the center button down with my finger, but I'm going to show it to you right here. That center button. We're going to hold that down in approximately 5 seconds. And you'll see the 3 LEDs will flash, and then the center one will remain on. Okay. 2, 3, 4, 5. And there it is. And so now we've programmed that motor and receiver to pick up the signal to be a continuous rotational motor. I'm going to turn my power off on inline because I like to do that. And I'm going to disconnect power, and I'm going to disconnect my motor. We'll put this guy aside, and let's see how we did. So I'm just going to go back and do the same thing I did previously. I'm going to hook up my battery, making sure that the black side is facing outbound to the receiver, and then I'm going to make sure that my motor black wire is facing outbound and it goes into the number 1 slot. So now that's what you should have. You should have a receiver that looks like this. Give it a little backdrop. Receiver that looks like that. So we have it in 1 and the power on. So go back to my inline switch, power on. I should get a solid light. That's telling me that my connections are good. And I'm going to hold the motor up, and you can see the little blinds I put on there for visual aid. And I'm going to turn my RC controller, and you'll see that our motor is now continuous, back and forth. One of the big things, as soon as you do that, now what we've done, right, we've made it so that this receiver is specific to this RC controller because it's recognizing the signal that this guy's giving out, so they need to be paired. This receiver needs to stay with this particular controller. Maybe a little Velcro, maybe something like that where we just stick it on top like we have in the past, or on here or whatever it is, but this has to stay with that one. So I hope that helps you. Pretty straightforward once you do it once. I don't know how to reverse that, but I know that it can be done. I haven't done it yet, but that'll probably be in the next video. All right, have a good weekend. Bye-bye.